Wolverine, Keller Dover, Jean Valjean, Wolverine.
Let's go.
Drover, sexiest man alive, Wolverine.
Let's fucking go.
Are just some of the characters that Hugh Jackman has played throughout his glorious career. When he's not clawing his way through the silver screen, he would sing, dance, and spread love and positivity around the world. In today's episode, we will discuss not one, not two, but three of his movies, Swordfish, X-Men, and Prisoners, and through them, we would hope to see his journey from a guy who was not at all interested in art to a cinematic icon. I'm Darren.
I'm Tim.
And welcome back to MovieBeings.
Beans? Beings.
Cut straight through that one, didn't you?
Not once, not two, but three.
With three.
Yeah.
I
Hugh
can't count
Jackman.
any higher, so that was good.
Before we start out the episode, I have something a bit interesting today. I prepared a small trivia. I call it the Hugh trivia.
The huge trivia. Oh, God.
So Tim hasn't seen these questions before. I prepare 4 true or false questions. And all you have to do is just to answer true or false.
No, it sounds hard already.
All right. We'll start easy. We'll
Start easy.
okay?
What's his name? True.
His name is not True. His name is Hugh.
False? Damn.
Okay, first question number 1. True or false? He used to work as a professional journalist.
True.
False. So he did graduate from university with a bachelor in communications, and he did want to become a journalist.
Special opportunity for those who donate to the fight cancer. The best kind of photobomb, Hugh.
But he never got the chance to. However, he used to work as a professional clown.
I thought that was my job.
We have a photo. We're going to show it on the screen. Okay, question number 2. He has terrible eyesight and has to wear glasses.
Let's go true.
It is true.
Hey.
So he has to wear contact lenses, and he has trouble reading the teleprompters. So whenever he does a scene, he has to memorize the lines.
It, yeah. I was like, I don't know if... Is any of these roles we've seen him in glasses? I don't think so.
I noticed that when he goes on to some interviews, he has to wear glasses, but it's not that often. But I didn't realize that he has to wear contact
That's what I was
lenses.
thinking. I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen him.
No wonder he's angry all the time.
Yeah, probably.
He couldn't see it properly.
Got to be angry at everyone when you can't see him.
Okay. Question number 3. He was offered to play James Bond in Casino Royale in the year 2000.
I think that's true. I think
It is true, yes. So he was offered to play James Bond, but during that time, he was scheduled to film X-Men 2 and X-Men 3. And the reason he turned it down was he didn't want to play 2 iconic roles at the same time.
Damn, imagine if you did James Bond as well.
I don't think he will be a good James Bond, though. He's too nice.
No, that's all right.
Yeah, he's too nice to play James Bond.
We don't need another sexist James Bond.
I don't think it's going to be a good James Bond. I'm very glad that Daniel Craig got the role in the end.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
No, he is good, yeah.
Yeah, he's good.
Would have been great, though, to have an Australian as James Bond.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how he's going to pull off the British accent.
It's all right.
Yeah.
We'll colonise by the British. Same thing.
The Australian James Bond.
Yeah.
We funny. Good day, mate.
G'day, mate.
Put your hands up.
Put your hands up. Oi.
All right. Last question. Question number 4. He used to work as a math teacher at a boarding school.
I'm going to say false.
It is false.
One of these can't be true.
It is false. However, he used to work as a PE teacher at a boarding school.
That I believe.
Yeah.
He's fit enough for that, right?
So he spent a gap year in 1987 working at Uppingham School in England as a PE teacher.
You guys don't know that, but this man here, yes, I used to teach him at Uppingham School in London.
So he's been in England. He could be James Bond.
I don't think he can have a good British accent. Well, I mean, I don't know. He does a pretty good American accent.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm like,
But do you
hear
think
it.
that the British accent would fit him well?
You never know, right? Could have had one movie and see how it went.
All right, so I guess we're going to jump into his early life. I guess we can start with the impression. How did you know about Hugh Jackman?
Well, Wolverine. Like, I don't think I knew. I know there's not too many early movies before, like, he gets into Wolverine, but that's like the one I would have known him from X-Men, like those early 1, 2, and 3, and then obviously every other Wolverine movie after that. Because even after that, like maybe Prestige, but even that's a bit later. What's that, 2006,
Yeah.
7? Prestige?
No, wait, I'm not.
And that was like, I probably didn't think of Hugh Jackman in that, but it's always like, oh shit, I always forget he's in that.
Yes.
Him and Batman, Wolverine and Batman together.
Oh, yeah.
Or I'm trying to think, was
Christian Bale
Was
and
Christian Bale
Scarlett
Batman by
Johansson.
trying
No,
to
no.
think, no.
But The Dark Knight came out in 2011.
Okay.
So he became Batman after he disappeared for a few years. I knew about Hugh Jackman when one of my mates watched Swordfish. And then he was like, oh, because in the year 2001, it was right after Y2K in the year 2000. So computers and viruses and hackers became the thing.
The big the hacker thing. That's the thing in Swordfish. It's like the hackers. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh no. I'm glad this isn't a thing anymore.
And my friend, he was like, "Oh, you need to watch this movie. The hacker was really cool."
He just likes Halle Berry, maybe.
Not really. Well, Halle Berry was fine in it, but I don't think she was as attractive as in the Catwoman movie. But my friend was like, "Oh, you need to watch this movie."
I was going to say
the hacking was
she's
really good.
She's definitely worse than Catwoman.
Is it worse? You reckon?
Oh, one way to find out. Hopefully not anytime soon.
So Hugh Jackman was born on October 12, 1968 in New South Wales. And his mom was Grace McNeil and his dad was Christopher John Jackman. His dad was
What a name.
Christopher John Jackman.
Oh my God.
He is a Cambridge educated accountant.
He's got the name for it. That does sound like, here's my
You
accountant,
reckon?
John Jack the accountant. Maybe
John
not.
Jackman.
He maybe sounds like a truck driver or something.
No, he doesn't sound like an accountant. But he does have an actor's name though. Christopher John Jackman.
It does sound like an actor.
Unfortunately, he didn't become an actor, but his son did.
Well, there you go.
Um,
What did he do?
So Hugh Jackman was one of the 4 children that they had. But at the age of 8, his parents got divorced. His mom moved back to England and left him with his 2 brothers with his dad. His dad got remarried and he got another 2 kids. So his dad brought up the 5 kids all by himself, apparently. At the age of 8, after his parents' divorce, surprisingly, it didn't affect him negatively. But since the beginning, he didn't have any interest in art or becoming an actor at all. And the funny story was he decided to go to uni to study communications because he was so set to become a journalist. And I think he was missing on some extra credits. So his mates was like, oh, you need to do drama because that class was very easy. You just need to show up and then you're going to get extra credits. It turns out, he got to the drama class and then he became the lead role in one of the plays and then he got hooked. Got hooked straight away.
Doesn't take much sometimes.
And after that, he was like, okay, now I'm really into acting. I need to start an actual course. So he did a 1-year course called The Journey at the Actors Centre in Sydney. And during that 1 year, as soon as he finished, he got an offer to be on Neighbours.
Damn, straight out the gate.
Yeah, so I think this is something interesting and a bit different comparing to all the other actors. We all hear the stories of no-name wannabe actors. They're going to travel to the big cities like LA and New York and try to find for the big break. But it seems like things went very smoothly for Jackman when he first started out.
And it's always weird coming from Australia as well, which we don't have a huge our own movie kind of, scene. Mm-hmm. So it's always hard to I'm going to do some Australian movies and then maybe get caught and put in. Because we were talking about before, a lot of Neighbours for us is like a sitcom, but there are a lot of people that have gone on to have success from there, which is crazy, which is funny. Like you said, you didn't end up doing it, which I was surprised with.
And he turned it down because he thought that he wasn't prepared enough to take on the big role like that.
Which is crazy. When you watch Neighbours now, you're like, mate, they're not trying that hard.
You don't need to be that qualified, right? And during that time, he signed up for another acting course at the Western Australian Academy of Performing Arts in Perth.
Damn, the names.
So he got the placement, and then he had to choose, okay, either I'm going to be on Neighbours or I'm going to go to university to learn how to become an actor. And he turned down Neighbours, which was a massive role at the time.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, especially late 90s.
Yeah.
So that would have been near its height. And it's big in Britain as well, where I think that's where a lot of people find success. They get seen in Britain and that carries over to a bigger scene. That's why I'm always surprised. I'm like, Neighbours is big in like another country. I'm like, oh.
And Home and Away is one of those shows as well, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's as big as Neighbours, but even both of them are a bit. I think they're not as popular as they used to be.
But considering the career that he has now, I think that he made the right choice.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, you can't argue with his results now, right?
But then again, you know, like, as soon like this is a crazy story that I read. So he graduated the university in 1994. The day that he graduated, 13 seconds later, he got a phone call from the producers of Corelli. He was producing drama miniseries for the ABC, which was a pretty big deal.
Which that's a television show or channel in Australia.
Yeah. And then he asked Hugh Jackman to become the lead actor in that. So as soon as he graduated, he got the lead role in the miniseries on a big channel. And he met Deborah Lee Furness, who is his now not wife.
Long-term wife.
Yeah. And they got married 1 year later. And they were married for 27 years. So it seems like, you know, his story is a bit different. Like he didn't have the struggle that a lot of actors had when they first started out. What do you think this has anything to do with his, I guess, acting style growing up or things like that?
I don't know, because I was going to say he doesn't come across as like a lazy actor. He seems pretty good. Like it's not like he doesn't feel like come across as like he's you know, he's better than anyone else or anything. He seems pretty genuine. So it's just I think it's just sometimes you get a bit lucky because that's the hardest thing I feel like for an actor is to get renowned and known for something. And it's always like a hard effort to like, oh, I've got to do like a smaller budget film and then like move into something else and then maybe I'll get spotted in that. Maybe I'll do you know, and maybe I'll get something in like a side bit in a big movie and then I get noticed from that and maybe get my own film. But like, even though it's like an ABC TV series, which is probably not big in a lot of people's eyes, like in Australia only had like 5 channels. It's like 10, 7, 9, ABC, SBS. That's it, you know?
Yeah. But if you're saying that, then it's even more impressive that he got the lead role in one of those
that's
5
what
channels
I mean.
anyway.
Like not having any kind of maybe acting chops in anything to be like, oh, he must have had something that like people are like, damn, apart from maybe his good looks, but...
Well, I mean, like considering he's 6'3", you know, good-looking guy, you know, it doesn't hurt his chances. But I'm just saying, like, there are a lot of good-looking actors, you know, who try so hard just to get the first big break. But for him, it's like got the miniseries straight away, which is huge. And after that, he appeared in a few Australian low-budget movies, like you mentioned. But what I find interesting is a lot of actors, when they first started out, it's nearly impossible for them to get a lead role in any movies.
Or even a show. Even a show, it's hard to get like a lead role.
Yeah. And he appeared in 2 movies. The first one is Erskineville Kings. It's like a low-budget Australian movie. It made 500,000 Australian dollars.
Big bucks.
Yeah, big blockbuster. And then he appeared in Paperback Hero, a romantic comedy made by an Australian writer and actor, Alan White. And that movie did a lot better. So it got 1.3 Australian million dollars at the box office, which was pretty good, for a new actor. However, you know, during that time, he was still an unknown actor to the international landscape. But he got his first international big break from playing Curly in the musical Oklahoma. And he got nominated for like the Best Rising Stars. And they got him to play the same character in the movie Oklahoma, which is another musical.
Which I feel like I don't watch many musicals and stuff, but he seems to enjoy it. All the clips I've seen him doing like musicals and dancing and like, I'm like, shit, he looks like he's having a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's very hard for me to imagine Wolverine enjoying doing musicals.
Well, the thing is, he's an actor, right?
Yeah. Well, to be fair, like people think that his acting is very versatile. He does a lot of different roles, you know. And you know,
I will say our movie choices haven't shown that, but
yeah, you reckon?
We'll get to it.
Yeah, we'll get to it.
But I would agree that he is quite versatile. He does have a bit of range.
Yeah. And so after that big role, that leads us to his, I guess, the blockbuster success that he had. So he portrayed Wolverine in the first X-Men in the year 2000. There are so many other aspects around this movie, like just the writing, the casting, the production. It's just like it's really interesting to talk about, but I don't think we need to talk about this in this episode.
That can be a different thing.
But I guess we can talk about the casting. So at the beginning, the producers didn't want to cast Hugh Jackman because he was just an unknown actor at the time. So they offered the role to a few different people. The first person to quite a few people was not Russell Crowe. The first person that was offered the role was Glenn Danzig. He's a singer-songwriter of 2 different bands and the director of an adult comic company. And he turned the role down straight away. He said, I don't want to play this role. I don't think this role is suitable for me. And I have a few tours lined up for my band, etc. So they offered the role to Russell Crowe, which was pretty big at the time, after
he's huge,
Gladiator.
Yeah.
And then he turned it down. But he said, I think this role would be suitable for my friend, Hugh Jackman.
Well, there you go.
And probably that's why they are best friends to this day.
I owe you my whole movie career.
But I must say, like being friends with Hugh Jackman, he's gonna get you in a lot of musicals.
True. That was the thing. He's like, when you get in a musical, you bloody something called the Les Miserables. Get me in on it. I want to sing. I'm not good, but I'm gonna sing.
You know what that means?
Yes.
So let's talk about the first movie of today's discussion, X-Men.
X-Men.
Wow, what was your first impression of the movie and the Wolverine character?
I enjoyed it. Like, obviously, it's like an early 2000 superhero movie, so it's got all the aspects of that. Because when I think of those, I think like of this, the old Hulk movie, like the old old Spider-Man movies. They've all got that like similar feel to it. Like I always think of the scrolling like screens at the start, and they're all like warping through things or looking through spider webs and stuff. I'm like, damn, this is over dramatic.
My first impression of this movie was quite positive because prior to this movie, I was a fan of a small TV show called the X-Men animated series. They got the remake now, or they got the sequel
At the
now.
moment, yeah.
X-Men 97.
I think it's almost finished. I don't know if it's
the first season was just finished.
Oh, well, there you go.
And apparently it got like massive positive reviews. So I guess we can do that episode.
Maybe that's another thing we can think about another time.
Yeah. But the X-Men animated series was mind-blowing. And I didn't watch it on TV because I was back in Vietnam at the time and we didn't have it on TV. But I watched it on the VHS tapes.
What's that?
Yeah, just one of those things that the 90 kids will understand. But those shows, those episodes were so close to me when I was growing up, especially like the story arcs of Days of Futures Past, the Sentinels, the Phoenix story arc. All of those were like super close to me. So I was a big fan of the Wolverine character when I was growing up. So when I saw the live action, I was like, oh, I'm in. I must say, Hugh Jackman is a lot taller than the Wolverine that I learned, I grew up with. What do you think about his portrayal?
I think he does a good job. Like, we were talking about this before, and I think he is like the viewer's perspective, essentially, because he's like introduced to the X-Men, essentially, right? So he's like, we're all learning from his angle the whole time, because he like wakes up and he meets
Rogue.
No, he meets Rogue earlier in the bar.
Yeah.
But when they have the fight and he gets like knocked out and he wakes up and Jean Grey wakes him, and he like freaks out a bit. And he gets introduced to all the X-Men, so we're like seeing it through his eyes essentially.
Yeah.
And then he like Patrick Stewart, he shows his way and shows him everybody and teaches him about the X-Men and stuff. So he's like our perspective, but then it kind of gets into it a bit more with like Rogue and their kind of relationship, because they're on like the same kind of thing of like, oh, what is this place? Is it going to help us? And especially with Rogue, how she really the odd one out, because her superpower is very much a detriment to everybody, no matter if they're a mutant or not. And it's played on quite a lot, because she tries to run away because one of the villains try to scare her out of it. And Logan's one of the first ones to go after her and try to save her and try to bring her back and like talk her out of it as like almost a father figure or,
Interesting.
playing that role in it. And I felt like Hugh Jackman does a very good role, especially for someone that maybe didn't know the source material, whether it's like close to what Logan is or what. But I feel like he does a good job of portraying a good showing of this Wolverine, I feel.
And it's interesting that you brought it up because he didn't know about the source materials prior to filming. And the producers had to give him quite a few comics so that he can read about the characters and things like that. However, his character in the movie doesn't have a lot of lines.
No. Yeah, that's what I always felt. I'm like, oh, he's not... That's like I said, he is like our presence in the film. Like he's experiencing a lot for the first time, like we are.
Yeah, and in order for him to portray the characters, during one of the interviews, he said that Wolverine has a lot of emotional acting rather than just like dialogues, and
a lot of grunting.
A lot of grunting, a lot of like angry. But he had to draw some inspirations from somewhere, so he would look up Mel Gibson's Mad Max 2. And he would say, oh, these guys, they don't have a lot of lines during their movies. And, he learned, okay, I think I just want to see how he does it. And I think he did a pretty good job in terms of acting that. And I think you brought up a pretty good point as well. Like, we are watching the movie from his point of view. So we're kind of learning the world. Of course, some of us have already known about the world.
And this is really early in, comic book movies. There's been Batman, Superman, they're like the main big ones at this point. There hasn't been any success out of those movies, really. So that's why X-Men is like, this is, a new comic for like a wider audience, right? For the comic book, for the movie people, rather.
Yeah.
So that's why I always think this is like such a strange one to start off with, right? Especially with such a big ensemble with X-Men, right? So many people.
So many people, yeah, of course. And I said that we won't talk about the production and things like that, but I want to bring up the good point. Like before X-Men, the superhero movies took a big hit with Batman and Robin, with George Clooney.
Because they already had that aspect of campiness, right? Because that's why, like, those early Batman movies, like, they had a bit of edge to it. They weren't a bit darker, not like the normal... Like, some of those later Superman movies he did, they were a bit, like, edgy, but they still had that campiness to them. They hadn't... To what we know what they can be now, which is, like, realistic, dark, and deal with some real themes. Where this, it's just like, it's like a fun action movie. Here's kind of the overall plot, and that's kind of how it is. Like, there's a little bit... I think Rogue is probably one of the characters that are like dealing with maybe the most in this film, right? But everyone else is just kind of like introducing to how everyone plays. The main plot is like Magneto and how he feels about like how the mutants and the humans are dealing with each other. And that's why I thought Logan was he's a good vessel, because he's just like not really a part of either world, or trying not to be, trying to make his own way as a loner, essentially. So it's interesting to see him try to join a group and try to be like, get along with them and then help them. Right, finding his own like purpose through this, which I thought it's always interesting from his point of view.
And the casting of this movie is fantastic.
It is amazing. I'm sad they kind of botched it a little bit with like X-Men 3 and stuff. But 2's still good. Yeah,
but Patrick Stewart is definitely a good Professor X, and Ian McKellen is phenomenal as Magneto. I would say out of all the casting choices, Wolverine was definitely the one that a lot of fans would expect, because I'm pretty sure a lot of them are like me. They grew up watching the animations and they have this kind of expectation for the character. But I think the casting for this movie really helped make the movie very rewatchable, and the story was very manageable as well. It's not like they were trying to do too much.
Especially like we were saying, there's like so many people like involved in X-Men and even the villains and stuff. And I feel like they do kind of a good job of like setting up Magneto, setting up how the X-Men kind of run, and then like, showing in these new characters and kind of showing how the world works. And it is a simple story of like the mutants and how the humans are dealing with them, right?
3 words. Are mutants dangerous?
And that's basically it. And Magneto's like, these buggers, I'm going to make them all mutants and see how they feel about it, right?
Yeah. And I think that's a pretty good choice from the writer's perspective, because I think when it comes to comic book movies and superhero stories, a lot of the filmmakers, they want to try to do too much. Or the stories is too big,
especially
right?
now. After Avengers, everyone's trying to hit that again, right?
Yeah.
It's funny because you think about the ensemble on X-Men as well. It's like they could have almost done like a Wolverine movie or like a Rogue movie. You know, they could have done one for each character almost. But that's what X-Men is them, right? So it's hard. But I think it did work. Like, I don't think it's like top tier comic book movies, but I just think it's like a bit of fun.
Yeah.
Hugh Jackman does a great job. I think all of them do a really good job of their characters. I don't think anyone's really super weak that have like a big role, I guess. But because it really shows, because like in some of the newer X-Men, like in Days of Future Past, which is, I love that movie. And I'm like, they bring back some of the old guys. I'm like, oh, it's lovely to see these guys again, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I wish like they had a bit more of that kind of stuff. And because I know some of the new X-Men got shit. So
Yeah.
I wish they got a bit more time, but I still like, I'm glad that at least got that movie as well to be like, bring back all the old guys, and even bringing back Wolverine again as, you know, Hugh Jackman. It's always great to see him back. Even at that point, it would have been, I don't know what Days Future Past, but it would have been like over 10 years since the original X-Men.
Yeah. The first X-Men was very good in terms of like setting up the expectation and reviving the hope for the comic book and superhero genre. As I mentioned, you know, prior to this,
because it still doesn't quite take off.
No,
it still takes a little bit. Like there's the Spider-Man and stuff.
Yeah,
but that's still its own kind of thing as well. Like it doesn't ignite like, oh, we need more comic book movies.
Yeah,
because we had like the Hulk as well, which didn't land. Another Australian actor in that.
Yeah,
surprised they didn't get an Australian Spider-Man. It's weird, isn't it?
Who do you think could have played
Spider-Man?
Yeah, Spider-Man.
Russell Crowe.
Are you not entertained?
Imagine him trying to be a teenager. Oi, let me on the bus.
I would love to see Russell Crowe being an emo Peter and dance.
Oh my god!
Through the street.
He would have been good. He would have loved it. He's like, "Can I sing more?"
But you're right. So after X-Men, heaps more superheroes movie appear. So you got Spider-Man, you got Hulk, you got like X-Men 2, X-Men 3 as well. So it kind of revived the genre, because prior to that, you know,
but not to what we know it. It was just like there was like a possibility of them, like, oh, they can be successful.
But of course, you know, when you got to 2008, you know, that's where like MCU kind of started.
That's when the big MCU starts. Yeah.
But if you talk about the performance of Hugh Jackman in this, I don't think, you know, he had a lot of acting roles to play.
Yeah. I don't think it gave him like a huge chance to like show his acting chops per se, but like you said, it's still early. I think he did a good job of like you said, he's trying to portray more of like a quiet, emotional character, and it's not his vocal point to like go at everyone. He's kind of there to like experience the movie and like deal with it as he can, because that's what I mean. I do like, it is one of my favorite parts is like how Wolverine and Rogue kind of play off each other.
Yeah.
And I do think that's good, because obviously in X-Men 2, he has I feel like a much bigger role in that movie, because it really focuses on him. And hence like 3's a mess, but then that leads into like the Wolverine universe as we get it, which I feel like are some of the most weakest X-Men movies of all time.
Yeah. I
feel really bad because I don't think like Hugh Jackman's bad. A lot of the story is really bad. I'm like, oh, I feel like there could be so many more interesting stories, because even the best one's one, I don't know if you watch it, when they go to Japan, or he goes to Japan, and even that's like average.
Yeah.
It's just not as bad as those other ones.
Yeah.
So it's like...
And that's the thing as well, because when I read about the development of the first X-Men, the script went through like multiple rewrites, and they got in like multiple writers to write the story. And I think the movie really benefit from that. But the thing is, after, you know, like we talked about this prior, like Hollywood is like hit and miss, right?
Yeah,
when it hits something,
exactly.
like, okay,
let's try to make this work.
Make more of this. But that's the thing, like they didn't have enough time to develop the script. It took the writers 4 years to develop the script for the first X-Men. But then, you know, after the first X-Men, you're like, okay, now we need to make more.
X-Men 2 was good. That's what I mean. But they must have been after that point, let's pump it out.
Yeah, so in terms of his performance, I think he did a pretty good job in terms of like the materials that he was given, you know, like considering he didn't know about the character prior to auditioning. And I think, you know, like having a good story really helped the actors and actresses and also the characters as well, because as you mentioned, there are no weak acting in this movie, but the thing is, I don't think they need to have strong acting because the story carries them.
I think the story plays for itself, and it's
Yeah.
not like anything too crazy, but that's all they needed to do. It's not like anything too like emotionally weighted. Like there are some poignant moments in the film, but nothing like that needs like top tier.
Yeah.
It's all just like playing what they needed to do.
Of course, after this, Hugh Jackman continued on to become Wolverine for the next 17 years. So right now, he holds the world record, the Guinness World Record, for portraying the same character the longest.
It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Even now, you think like, especially with the Marvel universe, if someone will break that, but I think it'll be hard.
And after the first X-Men, and we mentioned this in our trivia before, after the first X-Men, he was offered to play James Bond in Casino Royale, and he turned it down. Again, do you think that he would have been a good James Bond?
I thought he would have done all right. Because what was Casino Royale? What year is it?
2006.
Yeah, so I think he still would have been all right. But like, I think at that point, that's when they were really trying to pump out those Wolverine movies as well.
Yeah.
So he might have already been like contracted to that stuff, already promised a lot of that stuff. So I thought, I don't really need it.
Mm-hmm. And in one of the interviews, he said that he didn't want to portray two iconic characters at the same times because he didn't want to divide his focus,
Which is fair.
Which
That's
is fine.
fair,
And like he did two more Wolverine movies, and he's set for life.
Yeah, well, he might be doing another one soon in a couple of months anyway.
Thanks to Ryan Reynolds. Thank you, Ryan. I guess before we move on to the next movie, I want to bring up a pretty interesting fact. Prior to first X-Men, his ex-wife convinced him not to do the movie because she thought that the role was ridiculous. It's like, oh, why do you want to become a comic superhero character anyway?
I think a lot of people had that view though. Like you said, like the musician before turned it down because it's still that kind of campy. It's not hadn't got that. I guess it's still not prestigious, but there's like a bit more movie weight behind it now. Where before it was like, because Michael Keaton was great as Batman, and even why have I forgotten Superman? The original Superman.
Reed's.
He was good. But that's what I mean. It was still hadn't to a point where it's like, this is going to push my career forward. This is just going to be like a weird, funny flick that doesn't really push my career up or down. But now we know, like, it can. If you like bring something to it, I think it pays off.
And I think in a way, the character Wolverine kind of paved the way for all the other superheroes, right?
Which is crazy because if you think about it, I think you would argue he's had more bad movies with Wolverine than he's had good. Mm-hmm. But like, I would arguably say Logan. I know this is a bit further down the line in his movie career, but Logan's probably my favorite comic book movie.
Yeah, probably mine too.
I really wanted to watch it for this, but maybe another day. It might deserve its own episode, Logan.
Yeah, I think we picked these movies because it kind of highlights like different parts of his career. Okay, do you want to move on to the next movie?
Yeah, let's move on.
We don't want to talk about.
I don't want to catch this one.
The next that we want to talk about is Swordfish. So starring Hugh Jackman as a hacker. Alongside Halle Berry when she was at the peak of her popularity.
Definitely.
And John Travolta.
Did she get offered the role for James Bond?
After this, as Jinx, Die Another Day, alongside Pierce Brosnan.
I think that was the first James Bond movie I ever watched, that one.
What do you think about that one?
I can't remember.
Yeah. But Pierce Brosnan was a pretty good James Bond.
I enjoyed Pierce Brosnan, yeah.
Yeah. Swordfish was definitely not a successful movie.
I can see why.
Well, to be fair, I knew about this movie prior to rewatching it, but I watched it for the first time just for this episode.
Same. I'd seen bits of it, but I never watched it. Like, I knew about the nude Halle Berry scene. I'm like, oh god, I don't want to watch it just because of that. And then I knew Hugh Jackman was in it and John Travolta, and I'm like, Swordfish. What a weird name for a movie. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, it's about hacking. I'm like, what is this?
But I must say though, like the opening sequence is very interesting.
Well, like we were talking about before, that opening scene, I feel like someone just watched The Matrix and be like, I'm putting this in my movie.
Yes. So that explosion sequence
I was literally like,
Matrix,
bro.
yeah.
I was like, what day is it? 2 years after the Matrix? Okay.
Exactly.
Surprised they didn't have someone doing the whole...
I'm pretty sure someone was doing that.
Oh, God.
But that sequence was shot with 165 still cameras. I kind of enjoyed the opening sequence because John Travolta's character was the center of that sequence, and he was telling the stories about another movie where the supposedly bad guy didn't go all the way to get what he wanted.
Yeah.
And then when the camera zooms out, we saw that he was having a conversation with Stanley and an FBI agent. I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And then the camera moves out a little bit. We saw a bunch of hostages. Like, okay, so this is intriguing. And then after the explosion, we got back to the beginning. I was like, I kind of want to see where this is going.
Show you the interesting stuff first, and then it's like, oh, it doesn't get any.
I mean, I got hooked, but then after that, the movie just like died.
Yeah, it is very not good.
But I mean, if we are just focusing on Hugh Jackman's performance,
I think he does a fair job. The script is what it is. It is a bit of a goofy script because in this, he's a father. And he's like a hacker that got caught before, and he's like banished to not use any like computing devices or something. When Halle Berry, she's like working with John Travolta, she comes up and is like, "Oh, I need you for this job," and he's like, "I can't touch a computer."
Mm-hmm. But here's $100,000.
That should get you started.
Yeah, and to help you get because your daughter's in with your wife or your ex, and you can't get custody rights. And it even shows when he like calls up and talks to her, the wife's like, or his ex is like with a porn director or something, and they do it all in the house. I'm like, bro, how did she get rights to this kid?
Well, I mean, like considering his situation, he's a criminal, of course.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, well, if he's a criminal, it's like.
Well, you can see a lot of the era.
It is of that time.
Popular theme, right after Y2K,
hacker porn,
and right after Matrix as well. They made hacking cool.
Well, that's what I mean, and it's funny that like I don't think Matrix is about hacking. It's like a part of it, but it's not like It's even funny seeing Hugh Jackman like cast as like the hacker. It's always
he made hacking cool.
Well, that's what I mean. It's like a geeky dude or something.
He doesn't look like a geek though.
No, but that's what I mean. Like it's a typecast. He is not like a typecast. But this movie is strange as hell. Because I think it's trying to be like a weird mystery because there's like meant to be twists and turns. But I was like not interested in it at all.
Yeah. I think, again, like this is what we discussed before. If the story is too big for the characters to walk us through, then we wouldn't care about the story. I mean, at the end of the day, like the story got so big, like, oh, he was trying to get the money. Why does he want to get the money? We don't know. It's just a lot of money. It's $9.5 billion. He's trying to get it, and we're going to put it in the bank.
Well, apparently, I don't know how he's like an ex-terrorist or a terrorist. He's like, whenever we get hit, I'm just going to hit them harder or something. And I'm like, okay, bro. It's just like, what's a cool theme? Like, what happens if they're like terrorists, but for America? And then they terrorize the people that terrorize America. I'm like, I don't know that's how that works, but sure.
And this is a good example of like when you have a hero and if your villain is not
I don't think there's a hero in this movie, really.
Yeah, what I mean, like Hugh Jackman was made out to be the hero and Gabrielle, she is supposed to be the villain. But then it turns out he's a villain, but he's doing things for a good cause.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's supposed to be like the satire image of America's government.
Doing whatever it takes. But it's like, you've hurt all these people. That's like the thing, right? They don't care about the people as long as their image is like, oh, look at what I've done. And it's like, well... it's weird as well because like I said, there's the twists and turns, and it's like that's meant to be like a thing in this movie, but you're just so uninterested. And even when the final twist, when you learn out that like Halle Berry's like the main bad guy, and it's like okay,
it's a double agent.
Yeah, it's like a double twist.
Yeah,
because it's like apparently bloody
John Travolta
is like a clone or whatever.
Yeah.
He's like, I've changed my face so many times. I'm like, mate, I've seen John Travolta have like. 3, like a mustache, and no mustache. That's he's changing his face. He's shaved. I'm like, oh, they're gonna like get in a different actor or something, and I'm like, no. But I was like, oh my god.
Yeah. So after this movie, John Travolta's got Razzie's award for the worst performance in. And this is why like for such a long time he got like no roles, or he just appear in bad movies altogether. I think after Pulp Fiction, like he got the resurrection for his career
on Pulp, and then it kind of jumped back down.
Just went downstairs, went downhill.
But back to Hugh Jackman. I do think he does a fine job of being kind of like trying to do best for his daughter. That's like the whole sell for him. It's like, oh, you got to do it to get your daughter back. I think that's a solid through line through his character. It's just like he's initially wants to do this to get the money to go like get a lawyer and get his daughter back. And then later John's like, oh, you gotta come and do the last job. He's like, no, I'm out. And he's like, oh, where's your daughter? And like, what? And he tries to find his daughter, and he's kidnapped her because she needs to do it. He's like, and he tries to save the day Hugh Jackman. He's like, oh, I'm gonna make it like fly around. You got to let us out, or else you're not getting. He's like, well, guess what? And he's like, he pretends to kill Halle Berry because at this point we don't know she's like the bad guy. And he's like, oh, I'll do it. I'll give you the money. And he's like, good job. And then he's like, oh, and then he's like, you're coming with us. And it's just like, he's like, oh, I just want my daughter to be safe. And he's like, hostages full of bombs, and Halle Berry's getting hung, and it's like, what the hell's going on here?
And it really confuses me because like, is John Travolta's character a good guy or a bad guy?
I would say he's a bad guy.
But at the end of the movie, like he killed a terrorist. So isn't he supposed to?
What
be
about all the innocent people he kills?
Did he kill? Well, I mean, did he kill innocent people?
Well, he strapped bombs around them, and then they blew up.
One of them blew up.
People fell out of the bus.
Yeah,
like,
that's the thing.
That's his fault.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like the movie,
the agents that were chasing him down, and he had the huge gun, and he's like, I'm like, what the fuck's this?
Yeah, like the movie jumps across like, oh, he's the bad guy, he's a good guy, he's the bad guy, he's a good guy. Like, why do we even care about John Travolta's character?
It's like, I don't care. Like, there's like, because obviously their motivations are like hidden the whole time, except for like Hugh Jackman. And like the agents that are like, oh, he's a bad guy, we got to stop him. And Hugh Jackman's like, I just want to do this for my daughter. And everyone else is like, oh, we've got our hidden meetings. Or I'm like, I'm not really who I am. And I was like, okay.
Nobody cares for us.
And I'm like, at the end of my whatever.
I think like this movie could have benefited a lot if they decided to just give John Travolta one direction to go. So you're a terrorist organization agent, and then you just go bad. Like you want to destroy everything. Like just don't put in the idea of like, oh, you're doing this to protect the country, because right now, like if I think about this, the sequence where Stanley took all the money and separated into different accounts, and then he got it back. Let's say if he disagrees with the character, it's gonna make it more interesting. But if he agrees with Gabrielle's cause, then he didn't have to go through all this in the first place. You could be like, yeah, I agree with you. Like you're doing this for a good cause. Here, I did your job. Pay me $10 million. Done. Yeah. And then we wouldn't have a movie. But then they tried to make a movie out of nothing, and that's why it was so bad.
Yeah, it's a really weird motivation of like trying to hide what they're doing to make them seem bad, and then they are bad.
And then
they're not bad, and it's like, well, actually, they are bad.
Yeah.
Just because you say you're doing it for good doesn't make you good. Because there's been a lot of people that say, I'm doing all this for the greater good. And it's like, well, you just slaughtered all those people.
All right. I think we'll talk about this bad movie long enough.
That's fair enough. Swordfish. Would not recommend.
Would not recommend. I mean, if you want to watch it just to see a young Hugh Jackman, be in a shirtless scene, of course, feel free to do so. Yeah. And of course, there's a nude scene of Halle Berry as well. But we don't want to talk about that today. And the final movie that we're going to talk about is, well, probably my favorite out of this list, Prisoners, in 2013, starring alongside Jake Gyllenhaal. And I must say, thank you for recommending this movie to me.
Well, we're choosing either Prestige or this, and I thought this was just a bit further along. Like Prestige was only a little bit out of like the X-Men and Swordfish.
And
X-Men. Because I was thinking about Logan as well, but I'm like, we don't want to do X-Men and then Logan again. It's kind of maybe a bit much.
Yeah.
And I do think Logan deserves its own kind of episode, or if we do like an X-Men themed or even a Wolverine themed thing, we can do that. But yeah, I still remember watching Prisoners. It is amazing.
Yeah. And that's a very long movie as well. It's a 2 and a half hour movie. But it didn't feel long to me. Like in the sense of like the story is so captivating, and it keeps me on the edge of my seat the whole time.
And one of my favorite directors as well.
Is it David Fincher? No, sorry.
Denis Villeneuve.
How do you say his name? Denis
Villeneuve? I think it's Canadian or French Canadian.
Definitely French Canadian. Yeah.
I was looking up his early movies, and they're all like French Canadian. I'm like, oh,
nice. Is he one of your current favorite directors
Yeah,
now?
well, he did Blade Runner.
The 2049? Nice.
And he's also done the new Dune movies as well, which I also think are amazing. Anyway, we're not talking about him. We're talking about Hugh Jackman.
But surprisingly, you know, like he's now well known for all the sci-fi movies. But this movie was not sci-fi.
But that's what I mean. He does great like drama and even mystery a bit in this as well.
And I must say, out of the movies that we have done of Hugh Jackman, this movie really showed his acting chops.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, you could argue in X-Men and Swordfish are very much cookie cutter films, just like a simple role. You're in it for your looks, you know, play along well enough, it does well. Well, this is a real movie that requires something from him.
Yeah.
Right? There's so many scenes in this movie. I'm like, holy shit.
Do you want to talk about some of your favorite scenes?
So usually it's all of him like being a father or being like angry at somebody, because he portrays himself in this as the father and he feels like he's the protector. He's kind of like what's the word for it?
Guardian.
Like, yeah, he's like a survivalist almost, because he does a bit of prep work and stuff. And he's like, I'm going to protect this family. That's kind of like his persona. So when in this movie, spoilers if you haven't watched it already, his daughter and his friend's daughter gets kidnapped out of nowhere. And it kind of like freaks out their world. And he's like, shit, I've got to do what I can to find my daughter. And the son, his oldest son, said they went for a walk and they found this weird RV. So he goes looking for this RV. We hear the police later. This is when we get introduced to Jake Gyllenhaal's character.
Detective Loki. It's such a name.
When I heard Loki, I'm like, what is this? But I was like, it's all right. It's a great movie. So one stupid name's not that bad.
Yeah.
But they find this RV and then they find this guy and they're like, oh, I forget this actor's name, but he's great.
Jake Gyllenhaal.
No. The guy that plays the guy they think they kidnapped the kids. He's driving the RV.
Yeah.
He's a great actor, but I can never remember his name. He's been in tons of stuff and he's great. But Hugh Jackman is sold that he's the man. And he goes to extreme lengths to like find out where his daughter and his friend's daughter has been taken to. And it's like insane what he goes through to like find it. And it's insane. But my favourite scene is probably when he's in the car with Jake Gyllenhaal when he pretends to go into the liquor store.
Yeah.
And he's like, why are you here? I saw you walking off. He's like, no, I'm here getting drunk because I can't fucking find my daughter and my life's a mess and my wife's like taking drugs and can't wake up and like I'm trying to do something. And he's like, what are you doing? You're following me, not trying to find my daughter. Where's the guy? The guy that was meant to be the lead suspect's gone. And I'm like, that scene is like, there's a lot of scenes like that in this movie, but that like was one of my favorite.
Yeah.
It was like amazing.
I agree. There are so many good scenes in this movie and the dialogues are very well written as well. I must say one of my favorite scenes is where he got called back into the police station to identify some of the clothing items.
They thought they found the killer, right?
Yes.
And he had all these bloody kids' clothes.
And that scene is horrifying.
It's brutal.
And, you know, when before he came in, he said, oh, my wife couldn't be here today. And I understood why straight away.
Yeah. That's what you're like, oh, shit, is this is it, right?
This is it. And
you feel bad because at this point, he had kidnapped this man or this like... what's the right word for it? Suspect, but he's like a low intelligence. He's not...
Yeah.
He's just like a dumb dude and he's just like no liability, but he really thinks he did it or knew something because he clearly kind of knew something, but obviously isn't smart enough to put it together. But he had, at this point, interrogated this young man for maybe 5 days or something. I don't know how long it was. And it's like even more brutal that he's like, oh shit, they found the killer. And what has he been doing? But... even that scene's great. You go on. You're talking about.
Obviously, this scene is like right near the end of the movie already, and up until this point, Keller's character has kidnapped the kid, has been torturing the kid, and has been harassing the detective as well.
Yeah.
So when he got to the room, and then the detective was showing him all the pictures, and every picture you could feel the weight lifting off his shoulder when he didn't recognize the picture, but then he's dreading for the next picture. And it's like this acting in this scene is phenomenal. So when he got to the sock and then he recognized the sock, like you could see like the sadness, the anger, the frustration. And then he was like, oh, this is it. And then immediately he blamed the detective.
Yeah, he's like, what are you doing? You were too busy looking after this other dude.
yeah, oh, and you follow me.
You're following me. Yeah.
You wasted time. You wasted too much time. You did this. And for me, that was like very good acting, because that's how a father would react straight away, because
It is on the extreme length, but he's like doing anything he can to try save his or his daughters, right? Or daughter.
Yeah. And that scene was really one of my favorites. And of course, besides the conversation they had in the car as well. Do you want to start with another scene that you like about this movie?
So there's so many. I love this movie so much. It's hard to watch as well. That's the thing. It's not an easy.
It's hard to watch, but it's not. It's hard to look away as well.
Yeah, exactly. Another scene when it's early on and he follows the kid, the boy, the man, and he's singing the song the daughters were singing, and he like gets out of the car and like grabs him and he's like, where the hell did you know that song? And then it like cuts to black and you're like, oh no.
Oh no. Well, he was holding a gun as well.
Yeah, he had like a gun and you could see he's like shaking. Like he doesn't come across as like a violent man, but he's doing it because he thinks it's going to get him the results he wants. Because later, like we say, kidnaps him. He owns like an old apartment complex.
Yeah, the older house.
Yeah, and he puts him in. He makes his own like torture system with the shower. It is terrifying. I'm like, holy shit, this is.
Yeah, and you could tell that it's hurting him as well, because when you torture another human being, like it takes something away from you, right? And every time you hurt somebody, like you're hurting yourself in a way. But for him, like he was willing to take that step for his daughter. And I think, like Hugh Jackman's expressions throughout all of those sequences are extremely good. One of my favorite scenes is just before that. So, when his friend's wife came over to visit.
Where they're torturing.
And then she untied him. And then he broke the windows and would try to get out.
Trying to get out, yeah.
And he got a piece of glass and then he cut Hugh Jackman on the chest. And I was like, that particular sequence was well shot, because it gives you claustrophobia. Like everything is so tight in, and then, oh crap, like is Hugh Jackman's going to die here? It's like, because you don't know what's going to happen. And yeah, that sequence was really short. But it gives me like, even when he was hurt, he was like, oh, that was close. But then he still continued with his mission. Like, if you tell me where my daughter is, all of this will go away. And I think he was telling himself that as well.
Well, yeah, exactly. He's really trying to get to results. So another great scene is, one of the daughters gets away and she's in the hospital, and he like books it there and goes there, and he's trying to like question her and like, what's going on? She like finally wakes up and she's like, you were there. And I was like, what the f-? Like, even watching it again, I'm like, that's
yeah.
And then it like triggers for him like where that was and what was going on. It like triggers for him, and he like darts out of there. And then Jake Gyllenhaal's character Loki comes in, and he's like, what are you doing? Wait. And he bolts after him as well.
Yeah.
And then he like figures it out. The mother of the guy's kidnapped.
Yeah.
The old lady.
That was a good twist. I totally didn't see that coming. Like, they set up the story so well, because...
See, that's a twist done well.
Yes, I agree. And I think in order for them to do the good twist, they need to give good misdirection.
Yeah.
Because
there's two other characters they give like the misdirection to, right?
Yes. But the first character misdirection was when he first got out of the police station after 48 hours. And then he said something to Keller. He said they didn't cry when I left them.
They didn't cry until I left them.
What did you say?
Which is like, what the... Yeah, like, it's so brutal. Like, that's a great scene as well.
Yeah.
When it was literally like, he's just there with his mother, or adopted mother, because it was just one of the kids that her and her partner kidnapped at the time, and he was just a bit stupid or something, and they're just like, oh, we'll just keep him as ours. Like, because he isn't smart enough to, like, own up that he's someone else's kid, because that resolves near the end of the movie. And that's like... I hate that Hugh Jackman just walks back in there and he's just like, I'm like, bro, just fucking break the door down. That's what I was thinking. I'm like, but he's like polite. He's like, I'm going to come in. And he's like, I don't want to hurt you. And then she's like, already got the gun ready to go. Because I think she's glued onto it by now as well.
Yeah. For that detail, I still think that the character's action was quite justified, because for him, like, he didn't know for sure. Like, throughout this movie, we don't know anything for sure, right?
The thing is, he was so sure about that young man.
Exactly.
That's what's crazy. Like, I'm like, the lengths he went to, Like, bro, I'm breaking down a door or like barging in there, even with your gun first, even if you pretend, and then you're just like, it all makes the story go or whatever. Like, it needed that next step kind of for, you know, the Loki to come along and find what was actually going on.
Yeah.
But that whole thing is like crazy. And she's like, oh, drink this and you'll get your answers. And then she like moves the car back and she has like the pothole and she's like, they're in there, and he's looking in there, like searching. She's like, "Oh, they were in there," and he's like, "Oh," and she's like, "You're getting in there." He's like, "No, I'm not." He's like, "Bang, you're getting in there." And then when he falls in there, he finds the whistle.
Yeah.
So at the start of the movie, when the daughters go off to go to his house, she's like, "I'm looking for my whistle."
Yeah, that's the great details. Like all those details got payoff at the end.
Yeah,
and I think that's how great writing is, right? You know where the story is going to lead you, and then all those details matter. That they just don't appear for the movie just for the sake of them. And going back to the sequence where he first came to the old lady's house, and I think this is how you kind of misdirected the audience, because nobody would think that this lady is a villain.
Exactly.
And even our main character, because he went there with the intention of like, I'm pretty sure she knows something.
Yeah, trying to get information about the kid more than, you know, what is she doing it.
Yeah.
Because it's crazy. Like, it is. Like you said, all the details like come back or pay off. They're important to the story. They're not just things that happen. Like, there's the whole maze thing. There's the book that like one of the people they think is the killers, he reads the book that's written by the actual people that were like kidnapping and stuff. And he was the one that did all the mazes. And that's why he was writing all the mazes. It's like so many details that like pay off. Like we were talking about the whistle at the end of the movie, Jake Gyllenhaal comes back as they're doing the excavating, looking for bodies, and everyone's going off, and you can hear like a slight whistle. So it's like it comes back around again that Hugh Jackman's down there blowing his little whistle under the bloody old car, and then because I couldn't remember, because I hadn't watched it in like probably since I initially watched it, because I couldn't remember if he left or not, but I'm like, no, he clearly hears him.
Yeah. And I think that's where the movie ended.
Yeah, because I always think of Inception with the bloody spinning top. Yeah. But I'm like, no, he does hear him. Yeah. He does hear him, because he does like, oh, I don't know what that is. He kind of like almost turns his head, then he actually hears it properly again. He's like, because I think it clicks in his head because of Hugh Jackman's character. But when Jake Gyllenhaal got shot in the head nearly, and he's in the hospital, and the girl comes back and she's got the whistle, and he's like, oh, you found your whistle? And she's like, oh, no, I bought it. So that's when when he hears it again, it's like, oh, it is the whistle. So someone is, whether he knew it was Hugh Jackman's character or not, but he knew there was someone else there.
That was a great detail, and I like how all these details in the movies got explained to us in a very non-forced way.
Yeah,
it's very organic.
Yeah.
I really like the sequence where Jake Gyllenhaal's characters drove the little girl to the hospital.
Yeah, that was intense.
Yeah, I was like,
even though I knew what was happening, and I'm like, he's got the whole bullet scrape across his head. He's just like, oh my God.
Yeah, that was intense.
It was a great scene.
Yeah, and I was hoping that he wouldn't get into an accident. I was like, no.
Well, I'm like, that would have been imagine if that happened. That would how they make a bad ending. He like gets in a car accident. Him and the daughter die. Hugh Jackman stuck down a hole.
Yeah, the villain did it again. Maybe like he missed the villain, or she got a Kevlar on or something like that. But
definitely one of his better movies. Like I'd say like that, Prestige, Logan. There's probably other things I'm missing off the top of my head, but they're like the big three when I think of like good Hugh Jackman movies.
The Greatest Showman, where you hear him sing.
Watched that.
You hear him sing for the whole movie. Are there any other things that you want to discuss about this movie before we wrap up this episode?
I will say, like, those movies we chose were kind of crazy. Like, they're almost always like a father figure he was like cast as.
Interesting, yeah.
Like, in X-Men, it's a bit more like figurative, not like literal. But I do think he's like a father figure to Rogue, and he's literally a father in the other two movies.
Yes.
But I do think he does do like... It's crazy, like you said, he never had kids, right? So it's kind of interesting that he plays these father figures and does a very, obviously in Prisoners, because he's bloody amazing in that movie. But even in the other two, I do think he does a good job of being like portraying a father or someone or an older figure that cares, like for Rogue. And even he does come off as a good dad in Swordfish, whether or not the movie's not great. But I feel like he does do a good job of like, he really tries to be a good father to his daughter.
And interesting that you bring it up, because in his real life, even though he's been married to his wife for 27 years, they don't have any kids of their own. 2 of their children are all adopted.
which is great as well. Like that's like another thing. Like I'm sure he is a great father, like in real life, but it's crazy. Like, but I'm trying to think of other movies. Like obviously Prestige isn't a father, and even I guess Logan as well. When you think of Logan, like that you could argue that's one of his greatest roles he's done in that movie. And that's another father figure role, not literally, but like another figurative. Like, is it what's her name? X-24?
X26.
It's one of those numbers, but yeah, she's like little Wolverine.
Yeah, interesting.
And that's great as well. Yeah. But I do think he does an amazing job. But I think he's a great emotional actor. Like, especially in like Prestige and shit. I wish we watched Prestige as well. Maybe we'll probably go through Christopher Nolan's movies at one point. I always found that funny when I wasn't even thinking about it. I'm like, oh, Christopher Nolan and Villanueva and both Hugh Jackman have been in both of them. I was like, oh, that's crazy. I didn't even, probably my two favorite like directors.
Well, definitely we will need to visit Christopher Nolan's film history and also
Villanueva's like
Villanueva.
I'm gonna get it wrong. I'll just stick to saying it right.
Villanueva.
I don't even know if I'm saying it right.
Well, I'm pretty sure I read somewhere on Wikipedia it says like Villeneuve or something.
Villeneuve, like more French, like a more French accent.
Yeah.
Anyway, Hugh Jackman's
great
Wolverine. Not much else.
And Prisoners, like that's a great movie if you haven't seen it.
If we're going to recommend something, yes, definitely go to watch Prisoners.
Yeah, and we have reached the end of the episode. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a thumbs up, click the subscribe button, turn on the bell so that you get the notifications for the latest episode. And just follow Hugh Jackman, and we can't wait to see him in the newest Wolverine movie.
Wolverine and Ryan Reynolds.
And Deadpool, not just Ryan Reynolds playing himself. I'm Darren.
I'm Tim.
And this has been Movie Beings.